Ethan had always been drawn to the strange and unusual. So when he heard whispers of the abandoned house on the edge of town, he knew he had to investigate. Locals told chilling tales. They spoke of a malevolent presence and warned of a curse. Ethan, a lover of ghost stories, was more intrigued than afraid. He decided to venture into the darkness and uncover the truth behind the rumours. The old house stood isolated, shrouded in an almost permanent fog. Its silhouette was a jagged scar against the gloomy skyline. As Ethan approached, a cold shiver ran down his spine. The air grew heavy with a palpable sense of dread. He paused at the rusted iron gate, its teeth bared like those of a sleeping monster. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pushed the gate open. It groaned, a tortured sound that echoed in the stillness. He stepped onto the overgrown path, each step drawing him closer to the mysteries that awaited within. A sense of anticipation, a mixture of fear and excitement, surged through him. The adventure had begun. The house loomed larger with each step. Its windows, dark and vacant, stared back like the eyes of a predator. The paint peeled from the walls, revealing the rotting wood beneath. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and knocked on the front door. The sound echoed through the silence unanswered. He tried the doorknob. To his surprise, it turned with a grating sound. The door creaked open, revealing a dark and dusty hallway. A musty smell, like the breath of time, wafted out. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air inside was heavy and still. Cobwebs clung to every surface and dust lay thick on the floor. Ethan could hear the sound of his own breathing, loud in the silence. He pulled out a flashlight from his backpack and flicked it on. The weak beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing glimpses of forgotten furniture and faded grandeur. He walked slowly down the hallway, his footsteps echoing eerily. Shadows danced at the edge of his flashlight beam, taking on sinister shapes that shifted and changed with every move. The house was a labyrinth of dark hallways and dusty rooms. Ethan wandered through the remnants of a forgotten life. He found a dining room with a long, decaying table and chairs draped in cobwebs. A grandfather clock stood frozen in time, its pendulum still. He imagined the family that once dined here, their laughter echoing through the halls. Upstairs he discovered bedrooms with four-poster beds and faded curtains. A child's room lay untouched, a rocking horse frozen mid-gallop. The air was thick with a strange sadness, a lingering echo of happier times. Ethan felt a pang of unease, as if he were intruding on a private grief. In each room he searched for clues. He was looking for anything that could explain the stories, anything that hinted at the truth behind the curse. But the house guarded its secrets closely, revealing nothing but faded memories and whispers of the past. The silence was broken only by the creaking of the house and the sound of Ethan's own footsteps. He felt a growing sense of unease, as if he were being watched. The air seemed to grow colder, and the shadows seemed to press in closer. Ethan's flashlight flickered, momentarily plunging him into darkness. He shook it and the beam returned, weaker than before. He knew he needed to find his way out soon, but something compelled him to explore further. A narrow staircase, half hidden behind cobwebs, led down to the basement. He descended cautiously, each step creaking ominously. The air grew noticeably colder, and a damp, earthy smell filled his nostrils. The basement was pitch black, the flashlight beam struggling to penetrate the oppressive gloom. Ethan felt a growing sense of dread, a primal fear that sent shivers down his spine. He knew he should turn back, but curiosity, like an invisible hand, pulled him forward. He had come this far, drawn by the mystery of the house. At the far end of the basement, something glimmered in the darkness. Intrigued, Ethan moved towards it, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, he realized it was a mirror. its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. Ethan ran his hand over the dusty surface, revealing the mirror beneath. The glass was old and warped, distorting his reflection. He leaned closer, peering into his own eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. And then his reflection moved. It was subtle at first, a flicker in the corner of his eye. But as Ethan watched, his reflected lips curled into a sinister grin, a grin that was not his own. His blood ran cold. He stumbled back, dropping his flashlight. It clattered on the floor, the beam dancing wildly before finally dying, plunging him into absolute darkness. Panic surged through him. He was trapped in the dark, alone with whatever lurked within the mirror. A cold laugh seemed to echo around him, bouncing off the stone walls. It was a chilling sound, filled with malice and amusement. Ethan fumbled in the darkness for his flashlight, his fingers closing around the cold metal. He flicked it on, but the batteries were dead. The mirror was gone, vanished into the darkness as if it had never been there. The laughter came again, closer this time. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Ethan spun around, trying to pinpoint the source, but the darkness held its secrets close. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, taking on grotesque and menacing forms. He felt a cold breath on his neck, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. A whisper, barely audible, sent shivers down his spine. "Get out! Now!" Fear lent speed to his steps. He turned and ran, stumbling blindly through the darkness. The laughter followed him, echoing through the empty halls, urging him on. Ethan didn't know where he was going, but he knew he had to get out of the house. The walls seemed to press in on him, the air heavy with malevolence. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath his feet, as if the house itself were groaning in protest. He burst out of the basement door and into the hallway. The shadows here were deeper, more menacing. They swirled around him, reaching out with unseen hands, trying to pull him back into the darkness. Ethan dodged and weaved, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the whispers all around him, taunting him, threatening him. The house was alive, and it was trying to trap him. He caught a glimpse of the front door, a sliver of light in the distance. Hope surged through him, giving him a burst of adrenaline. He ran towards it, the shadows in hot pursuit. As he reached the door, a cold hand closed around his arm, its grip like a vice. Ethan screamed and thrashed against the unseen attacker. He managed to break free, stumbling back, and then he saw them. They emerged from the shadows, their forms shifting and flickering like flames. Their eyes glowed with an eerie light, cold and cruel. They were the embodiment of nightmares, the faces of the whispers, and they were closing in. Ethan didn't hesitate. He threw himself at the front door, slamming into it with all his might. The old wood splintered and cracked, but the door held. He threw his weight against it again, and this time it burst open. He tumbled out onto the porch, gasping for breath. He scrambled to his feet and didn't look back. He ran through the fog, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for respite. The laughter of the shadows echoed behind him, urging him onward. Ethan didn't stop running until he reached the safety of the town. He collapsed on a bench, his chest heaving, his clothes torn and covered in dust. He looked back at the house, but it was lost in the fog, its secrets hidden once more. The sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the town. The fog dissipated, revealing the street Ethan had just run down. He slowly got up and walked back towards the house. He found the gate hanging open, its hinges broken. The path was overgrown with weeds, and the house looked even more derelict in the daylight. It stood silent and still, its windows blank and lifeless. Ethan cautiously approached the house. He peered inside, but he couldn't bring himself to enter. The events of the night before were still too vivid in his mind. The laughter, the whispers, the shadows, they all seemed to linger in the air, a silent warning. He turned and walked away, leaving the house to its secrets. Ethan never returned to the house. He couldn't. The memory of that night, of the laughter and the shadows, haunted his dreams. He knew that whatever evil lurked within those walls was real, and he had been lucky to escape with his life. The abandoned house remained on the outskirts of town, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface of the ordinary. It stood as a silent sentinel, a testament to the unseen forces that shape our world. And the whispers continued. They spoke of the young man who had dared to enter the cursed house and had barely escaped with his sanity. They spoke of the shadows that lurked within, waiting for their next victim. They spoke of the curse that remained unbroken, a malevolent presence that would forever haunt the house on the hill, the end.